Welcome, everyone. We'll just give everybody a few minutes to get logged in. Hope everyone is having a fantastic day so far today. Okay, well, as people trickle in, we'll be able to see them, but we'll get started. So we are just a little bit after 2 o'clock. For any of you who don't know me, my name is Kathryn Hunt. I have the great joy of being the director at the Lincoln Public Library, and welcome to our first Zoom author visit. Looking at some of the names of the people who are joining us, I know that we have some regulars to our author events. Obviously with COVID-19 that has changed, but it has given us the incredible opportunity to have Valerie and Liv Constantine, who otherwise live a little bit far afield, to come out and visit us. But today we get to have a conversation with them. So how this is going to work today, Valerie, Lynn, and I are going to talk a little bit. I have some questions for them. After that, by all means, we're going to open it up to our usual question and answer. Throughout the presentation or throughout the conversation, if you guys have a question, you can drop it into that question and answer in the bottom of Zoom at any point. Otherwise, when we open up the Q&A, there will be a chance to connect via audio to ask your questions, and we'll get through as many as we can in a decent amount of time. Yeah, and that's pretty much going to be what we're doing. So our authors today are Lynn and Valerie Constantine, who write together under the pen name Liv Constantine, and who write some fantastic thrillers. And thank you so much for joining us, guys. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Our pleasure to be here.
So my first question, I'm sure is one that you both get a lot. And Valerie, I'll ask you to answer this first, but how did you guys get into writing, but also into collaborating with each other? It's not as common to have people who write together the way that the two of you do.
That's true, you're right. Our first collaboration actually was 20 years ago, probably over 20 years ago, when we were both working full-time, and we started writing together at night. We just decided that we wanted to write a story about a Greek family. One of our favorite kinds of books when we were growing up were family sagas. So with all of the different ethnic traditions and the culture. And Lynn one day said to me, you know, there's really not one about a Greek family. So what would you say about collaborating and writing a story about that? And that's what we did. The book was published. We did then have, you know, our lives went in different directions. Lynn moved away. She moved to Connecticut. I'm in Maryland. We are about as far from the West Coast as you can get. We're all the way on the East Coast, and it's 5 o'clock here. So we're 3 hours ahead of you. Anyway, Lynn had twins. She homeschooled them, and then I was doing other things with it. I was doing different kinds of work on my own. And stayed in Maryland. And then Lynn went to a wonderful conference in New York called Thriller Fest, and was really, really inspired to get back into the writing game again. And she actually finished her own thriller, which is published under the name, her other name. She has a lot of names. You know, it's published under Elsie Shaw. But anyway, and then, so after that conference in New York, Thriller Fest, she called me and said, you've got to come to this next year. It's really going to inspire you as well, and we need to collaborate again. And I thought, well, I don't really write thrillers, so I don't know about this. But you know, when you go to a writing conference, no matter what genre they sort of are focusing on, writing is writing. And so craft classes help you no matter what genre you're writing in. And so I thought, well, okay, I'll give this a try. And the rest is sort of history.
Right.
Fantastic. And now you guys are multiple thrillers in together, publishing under Liv Constantine. Lynn, how is that collaboration, or has that collaboration changed from your first book, The Last Mrs. Parrish, or your first book together in this kind of thriller genre, to the one that you've most recently published?
It's a great question. Our collaboration has evolved a lot over the 4 books or 5 books that we have written together. And I would say it's improved each time as we've become kind of like a well-oiled machine where we really work very much in sync together. So for The Last Mrs. Parrish, we initially split that up. As you know, it's a dual protagonist and narrative. So you have Amber and you have Daphne, and Valerie predominantly wrote the Amber part, and I the Daphne, even though we did write chapters in each of those and we edited them. And then as we moved to the next book, we realized that it really didn't work as well to split it up. There were 2 women in that book, but it wasn't a part 1 and a part 2. So the chapters were alternating, and we really felt like we needed to both be completely invested in both of those characters. So we wrote those to get, still separate chapters, but each wrote, it didn't matter. Like one day I might write one character and Valerie the other, and then we would switch. And now where we have come is that we both write everything, but we even share scenes now. So I used to write a whole chapter, and then Valerie might just give me some feedback. Now I might write half of it, send it to Valerie, she'll finish it, vice versa. And it's just become to the point where even we'll look at a paragraph and it will be, even a sentence actually, could be half mine and half Valerie's. And it works so much better that way. So, we just, it's great because if all of a sudden you're stuck, I'm stuck, I can send it to Valerie, and she has a great place to start, and vice versa. So I would say, I don't know what's going to happen by the time we get to the next one. We might be able to start writing with ESP because we do think a lot.
That'd be great. I like that one.
Yeah.
That's terrific.
Yeah. While we're sleeping in our dreams.
Yes, perfect.
Together. Yeah.
That'd be fantastic. It'd be a time saver.
Right.
Big time. Yeah.
So with that, and with how organic that is, I know a lot of authors talk about how their stories and their characters kind of gain a life of their own. You can plan however much you want, but the story eventually gains its own momentum. Do you guys ever find that you're feeling that story grow in different directions, or now do you work closely enough together that really you're charting the growth of your story and your characters and kind of getting surprised together by what they might do?
I think it's the latter. Yeah, I think, in the beginning, I would say sometimes because we're building the world and we're not sure where we're going. So in the beginning, we can be a little bit on a not different page, but we might have different ideas. But we were just saying it the other day, the story that we're working on now, and it's changed and improved. And we said, I don't know, like it's difficult when I'm writing alone because I don't have that process. It's such an evolutionary process and iterative, and that's what happens is we just discuss it and we go back and forth. And so I definitely think that it develops together. And even when we're writing independently, by the time we're actually doing the writing, we have the bones down for the most part. So as the character develops, we both feel completely free to take him or her in a different direction, knowing that when the other looks at it, either there'll be agreement or it'll just get modified a bit. But there's we really don't have a lot of restrictions on what we do, and it just evolves pretty organically.
And I think in particularly the last time I saw you, things changed dramatically from what we had initially, and not even just initially, even through the writing and almost to the end, when we had gotten almost to the final manuscript. The murderer changed, and there was another enormous twist that had not even been talked about at the very beginning or even as we were writing, but it made so much sense when we got to the end. So I think that was a case of really the characters sort of screaming at us and saying, hey, this something isn't meshing here. You need to fix this. But it took a long time.
True.
It's great when they let you know that this is their story and kind of surprise you.
You have to listen, though. Yeah.
Speaking of unexpected plot twists, Valerie, what's the secret to making a good plot twist? How do you guys build kind of the twist or the surprise that are in your novels?
I think if I could verbalize and give a definition to what the secret is, that I wouldn't have to write anymore to earn a living. I could probably, right? I don't know that there is really a definitive secret. I think, as Lynn said, talking it back and forth helps a lot. It helps so much to be able to bounce things off of each other and just keep going, what if, what if, what if? But I think what if is a big part of twists. Well, what if, how do we turn this on its head? How do we make it come about that it's totally unexpected, but it's also sort of inevitable? And then the reader goes, well, of course, I'm shocked, but of course that's what would happen. And so I think that's it's practice, it's reading, and yeah, go ahead.
To add to that, though, I think it's also being true to character. And I think, that we've all read books where the twist was crazy and unexpected, but it was not satisfying, because you're thinking to yourself, okay, it's just a crazy twist for the sake of a crazy twist. And so whatever's going to happen, it really has to make sense. It has to be something that you can absolutely believe the character would do, and that is in line with the whole world that you've built. And so I that is one thing that we come back to all the time. And often, even though we thought we had a great plot twist or way that we're going to go, we'll get rid of it if we realize, it's interesting, but it's not authentic. And so to me, like, that's the litmus test: is this really, are you really sticking true to your character, or are you just trying to build something that's just going to be exciting? And I personally don't find it as satisfying if I can't believe that a character would do that. So I think that's one thing that we really try to stick to in our books.
And I would add one last thing, and I bet most of your readers would say that with thrillers being such a popular genre now, and also most of us are pretty much homebound, and I would assume that a lot of you are watching series on Netflix and Amazon and other streaming services. And I think we all reach a point where we're like, I know what's happening next. I know what that person's going to say. I know what they're going to do. And I think that guessing, I think we've all sort of been very attuned now to guessing what the twist is and sort of expecting it. And so it is really difficult to surprise readers, because they're smart. They can see what's coming so often. So that is a challenge.
Absolutely. But I think it's interesting, going back to a little bit to what you were saying, Lynn, with this idea of, does the twist feel authentic? Because, I know, at least in my experience as a reader or a consumer of television, anything like that, especially if it feels like it comes out of left field, sometimes the most delightful thing, even if you got an inkling of what that twist was going to be before it actually kind of sprung, if you're able to look back and see, oh my goodness, all of these details play into it, and I had no idea till we got here to this precipice.
Yeah.
So Lynn, do you find that takes a lot of planning before you start writing, or is that something that for you and Valerie comes together a bit more organically as you work through the manuscript?
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, we don't necessarily plan it we know exactly what the twist is, because we do start with the twist so far. I mean, that could change, but so far we do know what the twist. We don't always know what the ending is going to be or how we're going to get there. always in the back of our minds, when we know we're trying to use sleight of hand, we're always trying to be fair to the reader. So as we're writing, if we either look at each other's work, or we're thinking, we say, okay, we have to tweak that because that's not exactly true. So we have to figure out a way to say it so it still seems like A when it's really B. And so we want to make sure a reader can always go back and go and look at everything and say, oh no, they didn't lie. They didn't trick me. I just read it that way. So we do, and a lot of that is achieved through point of view, and in the way that the story is told. And another aspect as well, especially in this genre with a lot of unreliable narrators and people with certain, psychological disorders, you can also do a lot if you have a character who maybe is telling you something that's not true, but she believes that it is true. Then, that's another way to get the story going. But we definitely always have that in the back of our minds, because nothing drives me more crazy than a bunch of plot holes when I'm reading something and thinking, well, wait a minute. So we do our best to avoid that, so we don't frustrate readers and give them a good book.
Fantastic. So now you guys are talking all the time. You're always engaged in these conversations around your work. Valerie, who's your most trusted outside reader? Who do you hand the manuscript to see whether the twist is pulling together, to see whether, in fact, it does feel honest and that people can then trace that twist back through?
We do have readers. We have beta readers, friends and our sisters-in-law. But in terms of the twist and authenticity and just believability, the person that I turn to is my son, Christopher. He doesn't read the book, but I can talk to him about, I tell him the whole story and give him the synopsis, and then say, well, what if they did this, or what about that? And he's just a tremendous help to me, and I trust him.
That's a fantastic relationship.
It is.
And it's good, because you have to have that trust there.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Lynn? Do you have someone that you outside that you talk through or hand the manuscript to?
I've also taught. I do for our books together. It's our sisters-in-law, and usually I'll talk to both of them right after. But when I'm writing on my own and I don't have Valerie, who I still will call for advice on my other books, but Christopher as well, because the Elsie Shaw books are much more action adventure and they're a little bit more geared to a male reader. And so in the last book, Chris was a tremendous help and helped me come up with one of the best plot twists. He was up staying with me, and I was poor guy, I probably cornered him for 5 hours on end to go over the book. So yeah, I would agree.
He loves it.
And he's a lot of fun. So yeah, he's a great guy.
Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. So now, Valerie, obviously there's all this part that's the process of actually writing the book. That is these conversations and the act of writing and building the story. And then you have things like what you guys are doing now, which is coming out, promoting the books, sharing your books, making sure that it finds its way to readers who love it. How do you feel that the divide is between the creative process that you get to embark in and kind of the business side of being an author?
Right. For me, the marketing side of it is that definitely does not come naturally to me at all. Lynn does all of our social media, and she's amazing at it. She's fabulous. And I thank God every day that she does that, because I would be terrible at it. So she does handle then a lot of if you would consider that, that it would be considered a huge piece of the business part. And then I would say that the time of creativity and writing takes up, if I take the example of a year, that process takes up more of the year, certainly, than the touring and promoting. That's usually a 1 or 2 month thing, and a really heavy 1 month, and then maybe some appearances on either side of that. But that one is terrific because we get to meet readers. and talk to people, and especially when we could do it in person. Of course, that was my, I can't see anybody right now, and that's such a disadvantage, I feel. It was so great to be able to interact with live people, and be in the same room. And so that part of it was really fun. And to get feedback and to hear people's reactions was very fulfilling for us. So you can ask Lynn about the social media, because she works really hard on all of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that takes, it's probably easier for me to split it up into a day, and that, because I usually just come up to my office in the morning, and I would say probably 20% of the time goes to social media. I mean, and I don't know how much of that is strictly necessary, but I spend a lot of time on Instagram, because that is a place, and especially now not being able to see people, where a lot of readers do reach out and talk to us or post pictures. And I really love connecting with them, and I appreciate it. And so I really try to respond as much as possible. So probably once an hour, I'm checking the Instagram. I'm going on there, a little bit less on Facebook, but still there, and on Twitter. But it's also a good, I mean, sometimes it's a little labor intensive, but it can be a good distraction, because I can't sit and write straight. I need to take a break, or I'll write whatever, 2,000 words, and then I'm like, okay, so let me hop on there. So it's a good balance for me, because the way that I work best is to just know I'm just working all day, and I just go on. So I just split my day up in between all of those different things, and finish it that way. Yeah.
Lucky me.
That's the best part about having partners. You get to play to your strengths.
It is. And she's saying lucky me, and I have to give her a shout out, because I'm working on an essay for the Elsie Shaw books that's really challenging. And she's got her granddaughter and her son and daughter-in-law coming, who she hasn't seen in a long time. And she spent like hours today working on that for me, helping me with that. So, we're definitely there for each other, and whatever we need. Sure.
So either online, if there's been something great, or when you guys were doing in-person tours prior to COVID-19, do either of you have just a really fantastic kind of heartwarming fan story from meeting one of your readers?
Oh my gosh.
Well, we did meet, we were in Tulsa last year, and again, I had posted where we were and where we were going to be on Instagram, and so I got a message from a woman and she actually was Miss Oklahoma a few years prior, and she was so excited. She's a writer, and she's trying to break in, and she's like, I've been wanting to meet you, and I didn't know you were here, and I'm so, where are you going to be tonight? So she ended up rearranging everything and finding a babysitter, and she and her husband came to the event, and and it was wonderful to meet her, and we gave her some advice about her next steps, and actually recommended an editor to her. And so now she's become sort of such a nice friend. She's always on Instagram messaging us from doing everything she can to like talk about our books. So that was just one example of how social media can really take you from a virtual connection to an actual connection. And you had one, Valerie, about what's the one?
Well, it wasn't. I wouldn't call it heartwarming, but it was interesting and it was funny, and the audience got a big kick out of it and I think this was in Scottsdale, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, that's right.
Right, and we were. I can't remember if it was Parrish, or I don't remember which bookstore it was, but one of the women in the audience raised her hand, and her husband was with her, and she said, I have to tell you that my last name is Parrish, so I am Mrs. Parrish, and I really enjoyed the book, and we just got a kick out of that we actually got to meet Mrs. Parrish on our book tour.
That's fantastic. So let's see. So now with all of that, besides social media, have you guys found that, maybe this is more for you, Lynn, with not being able to bridge from that social media into an in-person connection, have you found that your interactions with readers or fellow authors on social media has changed with COVID-19? Or is it just more of how it kind of operated beforehand?
I mean, I think it's more, and I think, especially it's tapered off a bit, I think, as we're all becoming a little more used to this new normal. But in the beginning, with the cancellation of so many conferences and online events, a lot of our author friends, including ourselves, were doing like weekly Zoom events and pulling other authors in and just finding ways to connect that way online, which was very interesting and fun. It's not something that we had done before. So we've actually gotten to kind of know, even though we haven't, some of people that we haven't even met in person, doing events like this. And while obviously not the same as being able to be together, it's actually been fun and it's been nice. So I think there's more. Again, as we were talking earlier, everybody's kind of got their setup now, and they're making sure they have their lighting and all of that, because this is our new normal. But I'm hoping, and supportive too. I think, especially those of us who had books coming out during this time when we were expecting to have a tour, and other authors have been enormously supportive in posting about the book and encouraging other people, to try to find it, understanding, what it's like to be in this position. So I think it's already a really supportive community, and I think this has made it even more so.
I would agree. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think the difficult thing, doesn't really refer to social media, but I think one of the difficult things has probably been for the conferences that had to be canceled, and then trying to do that virtually is a difficult process. But so many organizations have been great at sort of regrouping and trying to get that together and get information out to people who had to be canceled. Their conferences were canceled and all of the plans changed. We were going to go to a lease conference.
Yeah.
Can you hear my dog, by the way?
Oh yeah.
Sorry about that. One of the joys of zooming from home. Oh my gosh. Someone will take care of him, I think. Anyway, back to you, Kathryn.
As I say, you got to bring the dog on camera. That's the rule.
Should I do that? You want to see him?
Yeah.
I'm always going to vote to bring the dog on camera.
Zorba, come here, baby. Oh, he turned away and walked away.
He's not. Hey, Zorba doesn't do virtual events.
I have a treat for you. Do you want a treat? Come here. Oh, look, I have a treat. Come here, look. Oh, come here. Come here, baby. Come here. This is Zorba.
Oh. Hi, Zorba.
He is a Cavalier King Charles Spaniel. He's been barking, so I brought. But you can take him. I'll let him go. Okay, that's your
Thank
screenshot,
you.
baby.
For my puppy
Yes,
face.
your close up. He was ready for his close up. Thank you.
So Valerie, in some other interviews, you've mentioned your grandmother's stories Nancy drew as early inspirations. What other inspirations do you draw on in your writing practice?
In terms of mysteries, I always loved Agatha Christie. I went through a whole Agatha Christie period where I read everyone, and in fact, Christopher, we would each read and see if we could figure out. We would read simultaneously, the same book, and see who could guess what was going. I never guessed anything with Agatha. But then I did. I really feel like the classics are an incredible teaching tool, and a great of great benefit to writers to try to intersperse classics into the things that we're reading every day. And so I do try to pick up, one or two or three a year, or even if it's to go back and read something that I've read before, because I find that I have a different perspective, and I read it in a different way, or because of changes in myself, then the book is different to me. So that's been a fun thing for me to do.
What's one of those touchstone books that you find yourself coming back to at different points?
Coming back to, right, what I have just come back to is Pearl Buck, who I read as a teenager, and and funnily enough, what happened was that in my book club, somebody chose Peony, which was a book again that I read. I think I was in high school when I read it, and I thought, oh my gosh, I would really love to pick up those Pearl Buck books again. So of course I went and bought four different ones of hers, and I finished Peony. I'm reading Pavilion of Women right now, and it's
I
fascinating.
love that.
She's an amazing writer, and I think that I didn't really appreciate as a teenager all of the history of the Chinese culture that she is so amazingly good at describing. So I've really been enjoying that.
I should read Pavilion of Women again. I forgot about that Pavilion of Women. I remember when we all read
Women.
that. Yeah.
And I'm trying to remember what the third one is that I ordered. I'll let you know.
Okay.
Yeah, it's terrific.
How about you, Lynn? What are some of the inspirations that you pull from?
So Susan Howich is one who, and that I can go back to again, and again back to that family saga and that the rich characterization and the point of view. And the thing with Susan Howich that I always love, and Penn Merrick is one of our favorites of both for Valerie and me. And I just never forgot how the reading that book and being in the first character's point of view and hating these other people that this character was describing until I got into the next character's point of view. And then everything turned around and it continued through there. And it was fascinating to me how, again, everything is really dependent upon whose lens you're seeing it through and how we all look at things so differently. And I just think that she taught me a lesson on perspective and point of view that has really affected and been an influence on the way that we do our work. It was really she was the inspiration really for the way we were going to do our second book, The Last Time I Saw You, which ended up changing because it turned from a more of women's fiction into a thriller. So she is one. And then on the more commercial side, I love Dean Koontz. I've always loved that, they're a fast read. And I first discovered Strangers years and years ago. And then I went and read everything that he wrote. And what I like about his writing, aside from the fact that it's just fast paced and it pulls you in, is that he also usually has sort of, a lot of moral thematic issues that he brings up and things like bioethicists and weaves that into a story. And he's terrific with his characters and especially his female characters. He's one of all the male writers that I've ever read, he writes the best women you can tell that he must have the utmost respect for women because they just are always well-developed, they're strong, they've got agency, they're funny, and the relationships between them and the men in the book are really healthy and good. So I enjoy that from all of those different elements.
Fantastic. So now, The Last Mrs. Parrish, if I'm correct, has been optioned by Reese Witherspoon to get adapted?
No, chosen by Reese Witherspoon as a book club pick, and it was optioned by Amazon. But but now we're out of options, so now it's being considered by a different production company at this point.
Okay.
We're not able to say yet where that is. Yeah.
Getting optioned is always a saga, from what we found.
Right.
How has the success of that book been with getting picked for the book club, with going into option? For all of us at home, that's Sam sharing with us the cover. How has that process been with this book picking up and having such great success?
I mean, it's been amazing, and just everything that happened with that book, it was like, it seemed like lightning speed between Mrs. People Magazine picking it and then Reese Witherspoon. And so we were obviously very grateful for the reception that the book got. I mean, it was a real labor of love for us, that book. And we had a wonderful time writing it. It's, always going to be, it's like kind of like our firstborn, I guess, right? I mean, even though we did write the other book, it's the first one as Liv. So it's got a very special place in our hearts. And, you know, it was tough to follow. I mean, for the second book, it was, you know, we felt like we had a lot to live up to with it. And I mean, and even still, I mean, we're thrilled that people are still reading it and discovering it, but I mean, it's not uncommon for somebody to say, well, I loved this book, but not as much as I loved like the last Mrs. Parrish. So, yeah.
How is it coming in after that success and trying to write the follow-up book to that? I mean, how is the,
it's daunting.
how do you get past that to make the work and then to let another book out into the world, to let everyone see it and, you know, hopefully love it, but you never know.
It was difficult. There's no question about it. I think we would both admit that. It took us longer to write this book. And it did really feel like that was the success of Mrs. Parrish was constantly hanging over us. And I think that made the process a little more difficult. Just it was a hard thing not to think about. So we were really happy when that book was finished and it was published, and we could get on to the third book and, you know, get really much more back into our groove, I think.
Yeah, agree.
Well, I've got one last question before we move. We've got a couple questions in our question and answer from our audience. But would either of you be willing to give us a hint or a tease as to what your next book will be about?
A little bit of it. We give you a teeny bit. It's well, we can tell you the title because it's already up on Amazon, and it's called The Stranger in the Mirror. And this one is about a woman with some identity issues. And in this book as well, it's primarily following one woman through, and it's got 4 parts, right, Valerie? It goes kind of back in time at
4
some
parts,
point.
right?
And then this one actually does have a male point of view, which is the first for us. So we're really excited about it, and it's very, very firmly entrenched in the psychological thriller field. I would say it's definitely a mind game book. So again, we really enjoyed it and are excited about that one. It's coming out in July of next year. So,
fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, from the question and answer, our first question is, we do have someone who's asking, of your books that are available in audio format, where do you recommend starting? What do you recommend reading first?
Well, start with maybe I would say The Wife Stalker. I would say read Mrs. Parrish last, since that seems to be the one that everybody holds up to the highest standard. If you read it, if you read maybe The Wife Stalker, which is the one that's out now, and then go to The Last Time I Saw You, which is more, here's The Wife Stalker, which is more similar, not that it's the same story as Parrish, but the same sort of feel as Parrish. And then read The Last Time I Saw You for more murder mystery, Agatha Christie type, and then The Last Mrs. Parrish. When you say, Valerie?
I would agree with that, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes.
But we're happy whatever and thank you for
yes, whatever order you want to do.
Yes, and that's The Last Time I Saw, yeah.
Right.
So we have another audience member who's also of Greek heritage and who's asking that you said your great-grandmother's storytelling was an inspiration for you, and wants to know, what were her stories about, and did she ever write any of them down?
She didn't, to my knowledge. She came to America right after the First World War. She was in her 20s, and she came with a 5-year-old daughter. Her husband was in America working, so they were separated for over 5 years because he couldn't, with the war and everything, he couldn't get back, and she couldn't come here. So she came here. They had 3 more children, so they had 4 children together, and her stories were all about her island and her brothers and sisters. Some of the stories were very heartwarming, and some of them were a little bit chilling because of how people are. Some people are wonderful, and others are not. And of course, she never, until she was, I think, in her late 50s, or she might have even been 60 before she went back to Greece. So she never saw her parents again. Her parents never met their grandchildren, and all of her siblings had died by the time she went back. So I think her stories for us, that was her way of staying connected to her roots and her country and her, although America of course became her country, but from her birthplace and her family. So it was something she loved talking about. And of course she had traveled. She had gone when as a student, she was in Egypt, and there were stories from Egypt. And I mean, we could go on all night with stories, but I won't do that.
And did those stories, I'm guessing, inform that first novel that the two of you wrote together?
Absolutely. Wouldn't you say, Lynn?
Oh yes, Circle Dance was definitely a combination of characterizations from our family and and stories, and all about that merging of two cultures, of the Greek and American culture, told through the two young granddaughters. But their grandmother in the story, Sophia, is one of our favorite characters. Named Sophia because, of course, it means wisdom, and she was the wise grandmother in the book.
Mm-hmm.
That's wonderful. So talking about a different one of your books, Wife Stalker, we have a question of what was the idea that led to the Wife Stalker?
What was the idea that led to you?
It was, yes, the idea started as a joke because we were talking about what we were going to write about, and again, as I said earlier, we always start with a twist, like what if this, what if that? And so I said, well, what if there was a something? And Valerie said, who wasn't a something? And she sort of laughed, and then we said, yeah, that's the story. So we took it from there. So it started as a lark that ended up being the kernel for the book. Yeah.
That's right. Now I remember.
And that was a lot of fun to write too. We had Wife Stalker
we did have a good time with that one. Yeah, it was fun. And someone, I was watching one of these virtual Zoom author events, and an author, John Land, who is a terrific author and a great guy, and my good friend. And he said that he always used, when people would say, what is your writing advice? He would say, sit down, just make sure you sit down and write every day. And he said, but then someone said to me, might have even been Lee Child, the thing about writing is that you have to have fun doing it. And he said, so now my advice is have fun while you're writing. And I think that is so true. Yeah. You have to have a good time. I mean, there are times that it's a struggle and it's hard, exactly. But for the most part, it should be fun.
Absolutely. So we have a question about process. So you guys have talked a lot about how you kind of move back and forth and talk about things, but in terms of getting started, does one of you write a first draft and then the other one go like for a chapter and go through and read it? Or do you both kind of write from the same point? How do the words start getting put on that page?
We both write. I mean, we figure out, as I said, the general bones of the story, and then we speak every day and we talk about who's going to write what. So we hang up and we both go and we write, and then we email each other what we've written, and oftentimes talk again, either in the afternoon to talk about that. But so we kind of assign scenes, and also say, if all of a sudden something else comes to mind that you want to write about, just feel free to write about it. But we're both writing a parallel to each other, and then sharing, or sometimes, like as I said before, writing half of it and sending it and asking the other one to finish it.
Half of a chapter, not half the book, not half the manuscript.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
And it doesn't, I mean, for the most part, we do write chronologically, but We often will write something that we know is going to be further down in the book, in time. Um, so it doesn't necessarily have to be a chronological chapter or scene.
And so similarly, we have a question that says your what if sessions no doubt develop the plot, but how then do you decide on your main character? And then do you find that one or the other of you tend to focus on a specific character?
Not anymore, right?
No,
I mean, no, we used to, but now we both write, equal. I mean, we don't measure it out to say, well, but it's just whatever that chapter happens to be from. Yeah. Because we both have to really know all the characters extremely well. Even if we were going to, like with Mrs. Parrish, even though it was 2 parts, we still had to know, because in Daphne's part, Amber appears. So you have to be able to write the dialogue so it still sounds like her, and vice versa. So we really find it easier to just divide everything by scenes, not by character at this point.
but I will say that I probably all the time have our favorite characters that up to write about. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Some
Sometimes
are more fun to write about than others.
Yeah.
Without
So
giving
all the
anything
books
away.
you've written, who's your favorite character to write?
In which book?
Any of them.
You mean what
Who
kind
out
of
of all of
characters?
them most fun to write?
Amber
I
was
know.
really fun to write.
Yeah. Valerie loves Amber.
Amber.
Worries me a little bit how much Valerie loves to, and how easily it is for Valerie to write Amber.
Who was your favorite one to write?
I think I enjoyed writing Piper in the Wife
Piper was
Stalker.
great too, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you might have enjoyed her a little more than I did even.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
But Amber's a close second. I mean, Amber's super nasty and fun to write, but yeah.
It's always fun to write those characters that you hope you're not at all like, and you wouldn't do the things that they do. Just like actors say that how much they love playing, a bad character or the villain, because it's something you can just really sink your teeth into for some reason.
Yeah.
I don't know what that reason is, but.
So this is a question for you, Lynn. We have an audience member who's inquiring as to why you use several pen names.
I'm actually in hiding. No, the reason is because I was going to write the conspiracy theory series that I write on my own as Liv Constantine. That was the original intent, but the Liv books came out first. And so and Liv is, our publisher felt that it could be confusing to have 2 names on the book cover. So that's why we combined Lynne and Valerie to come up with Liv. So then when I was going to write these other books under Liv Constantine, it's so similar to Liv that there was a concern that there would be people picking one book, expecting, say, a psychological thriller and picking up these other books that I'm writing, which are definitely much more conspiracy thriller, and being disappointed. So I had to come up with a different name. And so LC stands for Liv Constantine, and Shaw is a variation of my married name. So it's still, part of my name. I mean, I was going to use my dog's name, all different. We went all around trying to figure it out. So that's why it's Elsie Shaw. It can be a bit confusing because I'm not writing anything under my actual name,
but no one can find you.
Right. It's not intentionally, it's not intended to be like deceptive or confusing, but that's sort of how it turned out. Yeah.
Fantastic. So we've got a question of how do you guys get synced up in your understanding of a character? And does that just happen as you're collaborating?
We do a lot of in-depth beforehand, before we even start writing, talking about our characters and what their motivations are, what propels them, what excites them, what disappoints them. So we really try to get into their psyche and their thinking and their reasoning, in addition to, of course, the physical description. And that, more and more of that emerges, of course, as we're writing. but we try to go into it with as full a picture as you can before you're actually writing, because things absolutely do change, or you learn more about your character, I would say, as you're writing. But as much as possible, we try to flesh them out pretty fully before we begin.
We do. I mean, and sometimes they change, or it is difficult in the beginning. I think once we're 10,000 words in or something, it starts to flow. Like, in the very beginning, it's a bit torturous when you're trying to like eke out those first few pages and figure out, and it'll change. And we actually, I think 9 times out of 10, the first few chapters completely are rewritten by the time we finish the book, because then we then know the character better, and we can change it. And we sort of write our way into knowing them. And then we will talk about that. I'll write something and Valerie might say, well, do you really think that, she would do that? Or why is she reacting that way? And then we'll talk it through, and that may change. So it is definitely, an evolutionary process, which is another reason why we don't plot. We just find that it's impossible to know until we really know these characters that well, what they're going to do. And it also makes it more interesting to let them surprise us along the way and kind of figure out. Oftentimes we don't even know really what the ending is going to be. We're hoping for a good outcome, but we just kind of leave it open and see where it goes.
And then do you guys think that being sisters helps you collaborate?
I think so.
I do. Yeah. I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've had sisters come up to us and say, oh my God, I would kill my sister if we wrote together. But no, and I think because we know each other so well, and we think we have the same sense of humor, we think the same way about so many things. So I think it's a huge advantage.
Yeah. And there's a level of trust there as well. And,
yes.
The way our mother raised us, that, family is paramount, and you just, no matter what, nothing is ever to come between you. So it's not like, not that you should fall out with your friends either, but, it's just not a question of, well, first of all, we try to be very nice. We're not insulting to each other anyway, but it's not a situation where you're thinking, oh, if I offend her, is it going to be the end of the relationship? Because that's not an option,
Not an option, right?
Right. So, yeah. Which is
we'll be related forever.
Right. And we want to be, and we want to be close. And we've often said that, and we're just very lucky and blessed that we have this relationship and we're able to do this together. And if, God forbid, it ever got to a point where it started to come between us and our relationship, we wouldn't do it anymore, because that's a much more important thing.
Right. Agree.
So we've got one more question, and then I'm going to see whether we've got anybody who's raising their hand. And then we have a request if either of you would be willing to read a passage you enjoyed writing. But before we get there, we have a question of, how do you end up with 2 sociopaths in the same story?
I don't know. That's
which book are you referring to?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think, again, I don't know if I would say that there are 2 sociopaths in the same story. I might say that there are 2 people with flawed thinking in some ways, right? So we've kind of gotten away from that. There has to be, from the idea, I think, that you have to have a book where one person is all good and one person is all bad. And maybe there is a little bit of both in everybody. And, so there can be more nuance and shades of gray. And, you may come to the end of one of our books and you're saying, oh, okay, well, I expected like there to be a clear victory for this, but it really isn't like that, because life isn't like that if you think about it, right? And you can have 2 people coming up against each other, and they both can be right, or they both can be wrong, or they both can have a little bit of both, attributes. So again, we try to just be authentic, and they are who they are. We just write them. We don't really make them. We make them, but we don't totally make them. So
Fantastic. So is there anybody who, rather than using the question and answer window, would prefer to raise their hand and ask a question using a microphone? Everybody a second to see if anybody wants to do that.
The dreaded microphone.
Right.
Well, all right. So then, yeah, that one last request we had is we did have an audience member who was wondering whether either of you had a passage you really liked writing that you might have at hand that you'd be willing to read a brief piece of.
Oh my gosh.
So it's an opening or a closing of one of your books.
Do you
Do you
want,
have one, Lynn?
I mean, do you want it from the wife, does it matter the Wife Stalker, or does it matter what book, or?
Nope,
Yeah,
they didn't ask for a specific book, so.
All right, I'll read from, let's see, I'll read from Parrish. Mrs. Parrish. Not really. Well, I'll just read the first couple paragraphs of Mrs. Parrish. I don't know if it's the favorite thing, but it's just easy on the run, right? Amber Patterson was tired of being invisible. She'd been coming to this gym every day for 3 months, 3 long months of watching these women of leisure, working at the only thing they cared about. They were so self-absorbed, she would have bet her last dollar that not one of them would recognize her on the street, even though she was 5 feet away from them every single day. She was a fixture to them, unimportant, not worthy of being noticed. But she didn't care, not about any of them. There was one reason, and one reason alone, that she dragged herself here every day to this machine at the precise stroke of 8. She was sick to death of the routine, day after day, working her ass off, waiting for the moment to make her move. From the corner of her eye, she saw the signature gold Nikes step onto the machine next to her. Amber straightened her shoulders and pretended to be immersed in the magazine strategically placed on the rack of her own machine. She turned and gave the exquisite blonde woman a shy smile, which garnered a polite nod in her direction. Amber reached for her water bottle, deliberately moving her foot to the edge of the machine, and slipped, knocking the magazine to the floor where it landed beneath the pedal of her neighbor's equipment. "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry," she said, reddening. Before she could step off, the woman stopped her pedaling and retrieved it for her. Amber watched the woman's brow knit together. "You're reading Is magazine," the woman said, handing it back to her. "Yes, it's the Cystic Fibrosis Trusts magazine. Comes out twice a year. Do you know it?" "I do, yes. Are you in the medical field?" the woman asked. Amber cast her eyes to the floor, then back at the woman. "No, I'm not. My younger sister had CF." She let the words sit in the space between them. "I'm sorry. That was rude of me. It's none of my business," the woman said, and stepped back onto the elliptical. Amber shook her head. "No, it's okay. Do you know someone with cystic fibrosis?" There was pain in the woman's eyes as she stared back at Amber. "My sister. I lost her 20 years ago." "I'm so sorry. How old was she?" "Only 16. We were 2 years apart." Charlene was just 14. Slowing her pace, Amber wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. It took a lot of acting skills to cry about a sister who never existed. The 3 sisters she did have were alive and well, although she hadn't spoken to them for 2 years. The woman's machine ground to a halt. "Are you okay?" she asked. Amber sniffed and shrugged. "It's still so hard, even after all these years." The woman gave her a long look, as if trying to make a decision, then extended her hand. "I'm Daphne Parrish. What do you say we get out of here and have a nice chat over a cup of coffee?" "Are you sure? I don't want to interrupt your workout." Daphne nodded. "Yes, I'd really like to talk with you." Amber gave her what she hoped looked like a grateful smile and stepped down. "That sounds great." Taking her hand, she said, "I'm Amber Patterson. Pleasure to meet you." That is from the beginning of The Last Mrs. Parrish.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, both of you, for all of your time, for having this wonderful conversation. I know I've enjoyed it immensely. I hope that our attendees have as well. And then for anyone who has any questions, we do have, or do you have any other questions? Now is your last chance right now, but otherwise, we will have on our library catalog the copies of the books that we have at the library by Liv Constantine. And then also in the information about this event, there are the titles of their books if you would like to purchase them and support these fantastic authors. And yes, thank you so much, both of you. I really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Such a pleasure. And thank you, everybody. Sorry we
Yes,
can't
thanks
see
for being
you in
here.
person one day. Yes, yes.
And
Everyone.
stay well. Stay
Yes.
safe and stay well.
Yes, thank you.
It's both as
Thanks a
well.
lot. Thank you, Kathryn.
Yeah.
Good night. Well,
Night.
good afternoon for you, right?
Right.